Ancient cultures theorized the Earth was flat with a geocentric model, meaning we were the center of the universe. Is it possible they were correct and today's models are wrong? We'll find out today in today's Mind Melt episode. Please follow on our Instagram page at Mind Melt Podcast and follow on Stitcher and Apple Podcasts and leave a review.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Eric and Candra with the Mind Melt Podcast. We are coming to you today from Bayview, Idaho. We have been offline for a couple weeks. Unfortunately, we were trying to get a podcast out sooner than this, but we went down to McCall for a wedding. So we are here now, and I think you guys are going to really like what we talk about today. We're going to talk about the flat Earth and basically,
It's going to be a fun episode.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, huge shout out to Mac and JD for getting married, though. That was really fun. It was cool to catch up with old friends and drink a little bit and hot tub. I like McCall a lot.
Yeah, McCall's really beautiful.
It's more expensive than here, though, which surprised me.
Doesn't really surprise me. It's close
so
to
much
Boise.
money.
There's
True.
It's just
It was
all it is
smaller,
a vacation town. So
much smaller than Coeur d'Alene.
yeah, you got to have a little bit more, of demand for housing up in Coeur d'Alene because there's a lot of people that just live here all year round.
Yeah, true.
Where down there it's just vacation town like Tahoe or something.
Yeah.
But so how was your week, babe?
Pretty eventful. Besides that, so I posted on Facebook, so a lot of the listeners may know already, but our doggy had a stroke, so we took him to the vet and figured out his thyroid levels were a little low, so hopefully we can get that figured out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's a little depressing.
Yeah, he's getting old and he's our baby.
Yep.
So it's setting in, and even the doctor, you weren't there, Eric, but it was like, he's getting older and I'm seeing him decline every time he comes in. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah. Well, that happens every time that you see anybody, I guess.
But he does expect, a couple good years out of Bruno, so.
Yeah. Crazy stuff going on in the world right now, with all this immigration stuff and
definitely
the stock market and this fucking crazy, tariffs and the economy and everything's crazy, but
there's a lot to overwhelm you in the news.
Yeah, no kidding. But, life is good as you can make it. So out with the bad, in with the good. And
all right.
So I guess we'll just get right into it today. We're going to talk about the flat Earth theory. And if you haven't heard about this theory, it's probably because you went to college or maybe you spend more time around universities. I don't know.
Or you took a science class.
Yeah. But this is something that I really didn't hear about until real recently. And I'm not being rude. It's just that most people who do science believe that the Earth is round. So if you are a flat earther, please take all this. We're not trying to be biased by any means. We love to research the theory. Well,
it was
it's
really
not being
fun.
biased. It's just being.
Well, hear us out. It's good to hear opposing views. When I first heard of this, I was like, whoa, no way. But I went into it with an open mind, and I really did try to listen to the other side.
Yeah.
So just do the same.
Yeah. When was the first time that you heard it?
Well, a year ago, actually.
Yeah.
I think really. And it was a really close friend of mine who told me that they were starting to get into it, and they're really smart, and they still are. And they're super logical most of the time and just really good people. So I was like, all right, there might be something to this. And I tried really hard to, get into it. But it kind of, if you're religious, don't take this wrong either. But when I was little, my mom would drag me to church. And every time I went, I would leave less convinced. And I feel I have the same experience with the flat Earth theory. Every time I look into it, I leave a little bit more like, all right,
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
I know. It's really interesting. The first time that I heard of it, it was probably the same time that you did.
Yeah.
But I did hear about the hollow Earth theory prior to that, And when I heard of the hollow earth theory, I was really shocked that there was that theory out there, and that people believed it. I mean, just because of the way that planets are formed and different things like that. I mean, it's really strange to me that something that is said by like one or two people, and that these things can, because they're kind of sexy, it's unusual, it's not heard of, they'll really perpetuate,
It's sexy.
And it is. I mean,
it's attractive.
It's attractive. It's when you hear of something that's so unusual.
Well, oh, dude, I was like that. I'm like, I want in on this. Like, if the Earth is flat, I want to know about this shit.
Yeah.
I was stoked.
Totally. I mean, and especially because I mean, there is a lot of deception in the world. I mean,
absolutely.
And
there's a lot of things we can't explain yet.
Right. And it's part of our human nature to be attracted to deception. Like one of the biggest character traits of humans is that we are really good at detecting lies, because it's a way for us to survive and evolve. And lie detection is something that is innately built into humans. It's one of our biggest characteristics, is reading lies. So when we hear of something that's a huge deception, it's something that naturally we want to know more. We got to figure it out.
Yeah, it's like an instinct. That's what it felt like.
It is totally an instinct. We have to figure it out. And then when you feel like you're fooled, it's a whole new emotional trigger. Mm-hmm. So when I first heard of this, I heard of the hollow earth theory, and it was a friend of mine who, we were driving down to South Lake Tahoe, and he starts going off about how, when you're really ready to hear some crazy conspiracies that are totally true, like, let me know. And I was like, yeah, I guess I'm ready. And he starts going on about how there was this guy, Admiral Byrd, I think was his name. And I have not looked into this theory, so if I'm butchering this, I'm really sorry. But there's this guy, Admiral Byrd, who was an admiral for the U.S. Air Force or something, and he was flying over, I believe it was Antarctica, and there was a big fucking hole, and he decided...
We'll remember he was flying over Antarctica later, because that's relative. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, this was before the Antarctica treaty, so that could have actually played into their theory.
I see.
But he was flying over Antarctica, and he saw a big fucking hole, and he decided to tip his nose down and fly in there, which is, as a pilot, something that I would definitely do. If I saw a big hole somewhere and I'm flying a plane, first thing I'm going to do is nosedive right into that bitch. But yeah, so he saw this hole, decided to fly his plane in there, and he goes in there and he sees these like different, I guess, species of humans, and they're like 8 feet tall or 80 feet tall or 20 feet tall. I don't know. I'm butchering this for sure, but this is
civilization.
Yeah, civilization, and they're really fucking tall. And there's actually a sun in there, is what this person was telling me, and all this stuff.
Well, so that explains the like lava, maybe?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that
anyways
doesn't. Yeah,
so this might be a whole like another episode.
Yeah, maybe down the road this will be another episode. So anyways, I was at this music festival, and me and my friends are all standing around talking, and I was like, dude, you want to hear fucking crazy shit that one of my friends was telling me? And I was like trying to explain to this, I was with a group of people, and I was trying to explain to them how a friend of mine thought that the earth was hollow, and how crazy this is, and how, like, atomic accumulation, and like basically this isn't how planets are formed, and how crazy it was. And then,
do we know how planets are formed?
Yeah.
For 100%.
Absolutely.
Cool.
No question about it.
Okay. Good to know.
So I mean, it's definitely not the hands of God.
I'm only saying that because a lot of the argument for that side for Hollow Earth is like, we don't really know how it's formed.
Yeah,
so I just
true.
wanted to put, I know.
Yeah, that's space dust and different things flying through space, and they come into collision and they accumulate and bond, and there's different, gases and particles and things like that. And then it heats and cools, and that's just, everybody knows. Well, not everybody, but that's how science works. So, yeah, so I was talking about this though, and another one of my friends looked over me. He's like, well, it's not really like that. And I was like, wait, what? And I looked over, and he's like, well, like it's hollow and you can go inside of it. It's that it's a flat plane, and then in the center of it there's I mean, he had a term for it, but basically it's like a portal to another dimension or something. And I was like really shocked because now I'm hearing a whole new version of this. And then he said that it was flat, and I was like, what? You know? And so then he starts explaining to me that the earth, the earth is a plane, and that, this is what all ancient cultures believed for a long time, which, first of all, that's not true. Second of all, I don't put too much merit into what ancient cultures believed about science. It's just, I mean, they didn't have the tools that we have today, so it doesn't matter. But so then he was saying that, there was
that's not really a good argument.
No, unfortunately. I mean, I do really, really appreciate the argument that ancient cultures were, because a lot of people put a lot of weight into what ancient cultures did, and it's interesting and it's a part of our history, but it's really relevant to science. I mean,
You could just look at what else they believed too, like
which is
like killing innocent people because they thought, they were witches or whatever.
Right.
So
yeah. So and then, he was like, well, think about it. I mean, does the earth look round to you? I mean, and he starts coming at me with this stuff, and at the time I was so, I guess, unaware of the fact that people thought this. I honestly hadn't heard of a flat earth theory other than when I was in elementary school. I mean, I never heard of it, so I was so unaware of it that I didn't really have any like legs to stand on in the discussion. Unfortunately, I wish I did, but
it was a little shocking for you, I think.
It was. So I just kind of nodded my head and smiled. And then, we ended up going back to our house after the music festival, and we talked about it a little bit more, and I was like trying to explain why I didn't think that'd be possible, and how, gravity, and he was like, well, gravity's not real. And I just, was kind of, my head was spinning. So this is a year later. And I have looked into this a lot over the last year, just because I've actually had quite a few friends go over to the dark side on this. And
don't say dark side.
well, you know what I'm saying. Like, we have had a lot of friends that have gone into this, and it's not that I think that they're unintelligent, and it's not that I think that I mean, I fully understand it. I really do. And the reason I understand it is because it's so easy to just basically, I just think that it has a lot to do with the fact that when you are a human, you want answers for everything. It's part of our human nature. We seek out answers. And when you have something like this that's this big, and you can say, oh my God, the government's lying to us about this, the scientists are lying to us about that, and all these different things, it all of a sudden can explain everything. I mean, and that's the thing that, a lot of people.
That's super true.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like recognize that when they do it. But if you listen to any of these YouTube videos or any interviews with anybody that discusses this stuff, they have an answer for everything.
Yes.
Everything. Satellites.
You guys just, if you do look into it, though, you really have to be skeptical. And I mean, I was just watching some videos of Eric Dubé, the guy who kind of brought this back to life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the only way to even watch his videos is to pause it every 30 seconds and fact check what the fuck he's saying, because a lot of it is not even close to being true.
It's like literal
and it's
lies.
Scary.
It's literal lies. He will say something, and the way that he says it sounds really intellectual, and his delivery of it is very calm and very nice, and you need to believe this because that. And
I mean, right there, I feel like that's an even bigger conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's just completely, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
So I'll tell you what, Candra, I think that was a good little brief, but let's get into the history of this and kind of talk about where this all started, the flat Earth and the sphere Earth. We can talk about where that started too. So basically what I have here, I wanted to talk about when people started to recognize that the Earth was a sphere, because that's actually up for debate. A lot of people attribute it to I can't even think of the guy's name in the 1500s. They said We were just watching a video by Mark Sargent, who's another one of these flat Earth warriors, and he said that that nobody knew that the Earth was a sphere until the year 1500, or that they didn't know, but nobody said the Earth was a sphere until the 1500s, and that's actually not true at all. I mean, ancient Greece was the first ones to really figure out that the Earth was a sphere, and that was done. I think it was first done by Aristotle.
I was just going to say when he observed the lunar eclipses.
Yep, that was the first time and recorded, and that was in his book, In the Heavens, and that was the first recorded that we know of. That was the first recorded history of someone saying that the Earth was a sphere.
Yeah, he was able to look at the shadow of the Earth on the moon,
right,
and notice that it was round.
Well,
every lunar eclipse.
Once he realized that, when he was traveling, he started to pay attention to the constellations, and he started to realize that there were different constellations in different parts of the areas. And that was another sign to him that the Earth was a sphere. So that was one of the first people that really came out and said that the Earth was a sphere. And then after that, there was, because of this, there was another Greek mathematician named Eratosthenes. And he went even further by trying to figure out what the circumference of the Earth was. And the way that he did this was he had someone put a stick, and I believe that they're 100 miles away in Egypt, and he put a stick in the ground and left maybe I don't know the exact length of it, but left 5 feet of it above ground where he was. And then he had another stick 100 miles away, and he left 5 feet of the stick out of the ground where he was. And so then at high noon, they measured the length of the shadows, and by measuring the lengths of the shadows, they could and the position of the sun, they could do the math to figure out the actual positioning of the sun and figure out what the circumference was. And they were down, I think, within less than 1,000 miles.
They were close, and that's something you can still do today.
Yeah,
that's an experiment.
It's even easier because
you can
we have cell
actually
phones.
do.
Yeah, it's even easier because we have cell phones. So, they had to do this and be extremely good with recording data and things like that. But today it's so much easier because all you have to do.
When you can get in your car and drive,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's you have to do it at the same time. So you'd have to be able to have someone somewhere else record it.
Yeah.
So
transportation.
But if you have a friend that lives 100 miles away, I'm guessing in this day and age you do. If you have a friend that lives somewhere else, just have them put a stick in the ground and do some math. And the calculations are really easy. There's even websites where you can input the information and it'll do the math calculations for you if you're not good at that.
But who owns that website?
I do. I do. I'm trying to convince you. So yeah, and then I just wanted to kind of talk about a few other cultures, ancient cultures, which is, I want to talk about the ancient cultures because, once again, this is something that a lot of people always bring up, is that all of the ancient cultures agreed that the Earth was flat. So we just, that was both ancient Greece, but there was also Mesopotamia in 300 BC. There was someone there that there was, it's your, I think there's something near your mic.
In my mic?
Yeah, your mic's clashing. I'll have to edit that out.
Hold on. Let me just fix it first then. Is it my cord? There it is.
Yeah, there we go. So,
in Mesopotamia, right?
So in Mesopotamia, there was another guy. His name was, I'm going to butcher this, but I think it was Seleucus. And he wrote that the Earth was a sphere, and that was also based on math. Then in Egyptian times, which is, it's really hazy to understand this because the Egyptians, obviously there's a lot of translation issues and things like that with ancient Egypt. But the Egyptians thought the Earth was flat for part of their dynasty, but towards the end of their dynasty, they wrote of it being spherical, and they actually had the measurements for the circumference of the Earth, but they were way off.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they used cubits, and they were off. But and then the Roman Empire and Alexandria both thought that the Earth was spherical. So this was all BC.
No, that's amazing.
You know, this was all BC. This is before like we had calculators, and this is before we had fucking satellites to show us images of the earth, and this is, you know, before all of that. So I mean, right there, this is before, you know, if you subscribe to a religion, this is before Jesus walked or whatever the hell happened at year 0. This is before all of that. And that is crazy to me. I mean, like, we don't realize how like long the age of the earth is.
What were you telling me earlier about Cleopatra?
That we are closer to Cleopatra than Cleopatra was to the beginning of the Egyptian dynasty.
That's insane.
Yeah, that is crazy.
We're just a blip.
Yep, we're a blip. And a lot of people seem to think that Christopher Columbus thought that the earth was flat, and that's not true.
Really?
Yeah, that's just not true.
Sorry, I don't know why my mic's doing that. I'm not touching it.
I don't know. Is it your phone? Maybe our phones are... I don't know.
Oh, that worked.
So, yeah. So a lot of people seem to think that Christopher Columbus thought that the earth was flat, but he didn't. They knew that the earth was round. And then, of course, Magellan, he circumnavigated the earth in 1519. Took him 3 years, from 1519 to 1522. He was out sailing the ocean blue. So that is something that I thought was really interesting. You know, like, it wasn't actually in medieval times, there wasn't much thought that the earth was flat, but there was a push from the Catholic Church to kind of perpetuate the idea that the earth was flat because of the teachings in the Bible.
This theory has a strong religious background.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I've listened to countless hours of podcasts now just because we were traveling a lot and we were trying to get kind of brushed up on things. And it seemed like every single time that I heard a podcast, there was a Christian
every time
bias to it.
Yeah,
so,
like I have some friends who believe the earth are flat that aren't religious. However, every person I've ever listened to online has been.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah.
And I think another thing that I find really interesting is that a lot of the people that I've met that subscribe to this theory seem to think that Christianity's bullshit.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, think about our friends that think that the earth is flat.
I see what you're saying.
Think that,
yeah.
They definitely think that religion's bullshit, but they think the earth is flat. And
yeah.
That's something that I think is kind of interesting about conspiracy theorists, is that oftentimes conspiracy theorists came from religion.
Yeah. I mean, you really got to do your research on like that agenda too. Like you really have to ask questions on the agenda of the conspiracy you're being fed.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to say, you know, a lot of these ancient cultures did believe the earth is sphere, but a lot of them also thought the earth was flat.
Yeah.
China thought the earth was flat until the 1700s.
Wow.
Which is, they were late to the game. Yeah. So, but I mean, this is something that, you know, it's based on your perception of things, you know, when you're looking around, especially when you're, you know, on a mountain or something, and you look out, it's really hard just to be like, I bet this is round.
Yeah, no,
You know?
I mean, I can completely understand if someone was determining that based on walking outside and looking around. I can definitely see how they would come to that conclusion.
The earth is fucking huge.
And we are so very tiny.
Tiny.
And we don't know a lot. Like, I think that's another thing that bothers me about religion and this conspiracy is that we don't have the answers for everything yet. And saying, you know, 100% for sure what's going to happen after death, or, you know, like with this conspiracy, for example, like they never say, I don't know, the people I listen to on the podcast, or Erica, or Eric Dubé. He never says, I don't really know. We're still figuring that out.
Yeah.
He just always has an answer, but it never makes a lot of sense.
And he agrees with you. So like he's really good at...
He has a very suave way of talking.
Yeah, he's really good at boosting up whoever he's talking to.
Yeah, he's a nice
ego.
guy.
He's really good at taking what they say and like, yes, exactly. You're exactly right about that. And that makes sense because of this. And so he
You think he's a con artist?
Oh, for fucking sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm
I
leaning
mean,
towards too right now. I mean, he's making a lot of money off this.
well, yeah, I want to talk about him a little bit more, but
Yeah.
before I talk about him, I just wanted to say a couple more things on this whole like
Word.
ancient culture thing, because once again, this is something that gets
Huge
brought up
argument.
all the time. It's like that, and like there are so many things that our early ancestors they were so right on. I mean, like look at the architecture in Egypt. Look at the
Gorgeous.
architecture in Greece. Look at, there are so many things. I mean, but when you look at things back then, people had a lot more time because farming and agriculture had been invented. We had water. It was a little bit easier of a time to live than their people before them, right?
And they're just humans. They're not going to get everything right.
No, yeah, but I mean, they did get quite. I mean, the fact that ancient Greece got this in 2000 years ago, it's just nuts. And so with all these ancient cultures being around, I wonder, like, how do people believe that it could be flat today? I mean, people back then didn't have any of the amazing tools that we have. They didn't have telescopes. They didn't have satellites. They didn't have, like.
That's the problem with this theory too, though, Eric, is like they don't really believe in satellites. They think that's all fake. So it's a huge cop out. They completely like cut it off to where you can't even really talk about it because it's all fake. That's what Trump does. It's fake news.
Well, I mean, another thing that we have to consider is that, like, even though this theory seems popular right now because we hear about it, it's not really that popular. And the reason I'm saying that is because when you look at the internet today, it's so easy for these small fringe group of people to get their voice heard. All they have to do is post on social media, and then because this topic is so interesting, because so many people don't see how it's fathomable, it creates interest, it's kind of like it's like, okay, it's kind of like the neo-Nazis in a way, like there's probably like 12 neo-Nazis in the entire fucking country right now.
No way.
I know, I'm just being facetious, but there's such a small amount
comparative to
the population of the world. I mean,
country.
or the country.
Yeah.
There's such a small percentage of people that are
but
doing
they're
that.
Psychos, so we know about
that's
it.
irrelevant.
No, it's kind of
you're right. It kind of is relevant, but it's like. But because it's such a small group of people, but they have such radical fucking crazy ass ideas.
Right.
Our tribe, which is the entire country, our tribe is like, whoa, we need to let people know about these crazy fucks. And then they start to like scream about it because nobody wants these fucking guys to like really shout their fucking ideas and get more people indoctrinated. And I think that has a lot to do with why people are so intrigued by like people that believe this. It's like when you hear of somebody spreading all this crazy shit, it just like, it's like a moth to the light. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. That's true.
You really think that? And then all of a sudden you're telling people, it brings interest. And I think it's really a group mentality. We're trying to kind of like subconsciously, whether we know it or not, like warn each other like, hey, whoa, watch out for this. This is a little crazy. And so what happens is this stuff gets the light shed on it a lot easier with the media, the social media and the internet, And so these groups that have like maybe 300 fucking people across the world, they have a voice now and they can create a group. And then all of a sudden these little groups of people can start to indoctrinate other people because the way that they talk about the science and stuff like that sounds very scientific, but it's not real. I mean, like, for
they're
example,
using it wrong.
Yeah. For example, electromagnetism, that's kind of like the force that they say that keeps people to the earth, and that electromagnetism is the force that holds us here, but gravity isn't real. And we'll get into this a little bit more. But my point is like electromagnetism sounds sexy. It sounds intelligent. So
I love that you say sexy.
Well, I mean, no, that is what it is.
No, I like it. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So when people start talking about electromagnetism and the electromagnetism is what keeps us here and gravity isn't real and all this stuff, people are like, what's electromagnetism? They type in electromagnetism. Well, that's the electromagnetic force. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, there's an actual force out there that's called the electromagnetic force. But you don't, because you're not a fucking physicist, you don't really understand what the electromagnetic force is,
Yeah.
right? So what is the electromagnetic force? Do you know?
I actually don't.
Okay, exactly. So the electromagnetic force is one of the strongest forces in nature next to gravity. And it's one of the forces that is very present in our day-to-day life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that is interesting about the electromagnetic force is that it's very similar to gravity because it attracts things together, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that doesn't make sense about the electromagnetic force is that it also repulses things. So think about
Like a
having a
magnet.
magnet. Yeah. Think about having a magnet. When you have the, positive and the negative, it comes together, right? But if you put the positive and the positive to itself, it reflects it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is if the electromagnetic force is what's holding us to the earth, then why can't someone create some fucking badass like jet pack with a negative charge that can shoot you up to the dome? All you'd have to all you'd have to do is have a reverse polarized thing, right? Because there has to be, if it's an electromagnetic force, there has to be a polarization to it because that's how it works.
Right.
There has to either be a positive or a negative polarization, which is the earth.
I feel like we would know because
yeah, we would. So there would have to be, and this is just something that I was thinking about one night when I couldn't sleep. But it's like I was thinking, damn, this would be so badass if gravity wasn't real and there was an electromagnetic force, because rather than having to fight gravity for our flight and things like that, we could literally just invent planes that were negatively charged or whatever, and they could just we could control the amount of energy that would control that charge, and we could turn it up and it would boost us up, or we could turn it down and it would lower us down, and it'd be like the most badass way of traveling, dude. I was jacked about it. I was like, fuck, I wish the earth was flat because we can totally do this shit, and it would be so much easier and better than the amount of fuel that we use to fly a fucking plane is so obnoxious. But if
any flat earthers, prove us wrong. We want to do this.
Yeah, we want to do this. It would revolutionize travel. We'd be millionaires. It would
We'll
be
split
so
profits.
Yeah, we'll split profits 80-20 your way, bud. And so anyway, so that's way off tangent, but I just
I did want to clarify though, I really wasn't making the comparison to the neo-Nazis as in flat earthers are crazy. I do not think flat earthers are crazy.
No.
I just wanted to, because it probably didn't make very much sense what I was trying to say.
No.
I just think they're uninformed. And like I said, when I first started hearing about this, when I looked into it, I was confused because the word salad and the science, I'm not really into science or math. So I really had to brush up on that shit.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. So
you're not crazy. We just need to have a discussion about it, and we need to all talk about it.
yeah. And if
facts.
you guys, if there are any flat earthers that are listening to this that think that whatever I'm saying is crazy, fucking email me, because I will have this discussion with you. And I'm not an asshole. I won't call you names or whatever. I might flip you a little bit of shit, but that's the extent of it. And I would
But you can do that back.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would love it. You could call me a globe or whatever the fuck. I don't give a shit. So, so the crazy thing about this is this whole theory of the flat earth, early 1800s, early 1900s, not very many people believed it, but there was this one dude that wrote a book called this Zetetic Astronomy and Earth Not Globe, which I thought was a really shitty title because it's not Earth is not a globe, it's just Earth Not Globe. And I was checking out this book, and it's totally available on Google Books. It's $4. I don't recommend investing into it unless you're really just bored. It's $4, and I started reading some of it, and I'm like, this sounds familiar. And so the reason it sounds familiar is because Eric Dubay, who is the flat earth fucking pioneer or whatever of today, his book is literally the same. I mean, I'm not trying to say that he plagiarized this book, but he plagiarized this book. I mean, it's it is literally, so many of the concepts he took directly from this book.
That's super, and another red flag that he actually doesn't believe what he's saying.
No. He just
It's con
he
artist.
just like found something and like figured out a way to like tie a bow on it and then used YouTube to get it out there. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, all those hits,
Yeah,
man.
and it's really interesting because this guy is like I don't want I mean he's almost worshipped by the conspiracy community. There's so many people that think that this guy is like a man out for the message, except for the other flat earthers. Because there are like different sectors
There's
of the
different
flat
levels
earth.
of
There's
this.
different levels.
Yeah.
And the ones that aren't on Eric Dubé's side or whatever, they think that he's a government shill being paid by
wow.
NASA to like put out the fake version of flat earth or whatever.
What? Oh, okay.
So
I don't get what the point of that would be, but I'm listening.
yeah, man. I'm sure that the government just finds random people to tell them to push out different versions. But so Eric Dubé though, he's really the guy in like the recent years that made this idea popular. Thanks, Eric. In 2014, he released his book called The Flat Earth Conspiracy, and that was the one that I just said was pretty much a word for word plagiarization of Samuel Robothman's Zetetic Astronomy.
Wow.
And so in this book, he just talks about, you know, all of these different reasons why the earth is flat, and he uses 200 proofs. And you can literally go through these 200 proofs and disprove all of them. I mean,
All of them.
yeah,
Really?
absolutely.
We should do that one day.
There's
Everything I have read so far, I've been able to disprove. So
Yeah.
I believe you.
Yeah.
But that's just a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that have done it. There's people that have made YouTube videos or whatever that are probably more intelligent than I am. But I mean, I did do a lot of the looking on his proofs to try to see what I thought, you know, and like then I verified it with science, and most of it isn't real. I mean, one of the ones that I can just think of off the top of my head is that as you rise, no matter how high you get, the horizon always is at eye level, and that's just not true. I mean,
Yeah, that's not true.
yeah, that's just I like that's
But you could do that as an experiment for
Go on a
yourself. Or even just like a huge mountain, like
Yeah.
if you're, you know,
Yeah.
like take binoculars, stare at a fixed point and then go up
right.
like 50, I don't even know
Yeah.
how many feet you'd have to go up. But I mean, you will be able
You'll
to
be above
see
it. I mean,
a
you'll be
different,
above whatever
Yeah.
point your eyes are at initially. It's like it doesn't make any sense, but it's things like this where he's able to say it in a way that sounds good, and it's just crazy.
Well, and I mean, no one lies that much, right? Like if you just, for me, I trust people as much as I can. I love doing
Right.
that. So if he's saying 200 things and every single thing is fake, like I'm not going to, I don't know, at first glance, like you're probably going to take it in as truth.
Right.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense why people would believe it.
Yeah, and then there is another guy in 2016 that came out with a book. His name was Mark Sargent, and he was another guy that really got this thing moving, I guess. And sorry, it's raining where we're at. If you guys can hear that, I don't.
Should we shut the door?
Nah, like rain is nice and soothing.
Oh, okay.
So, so Mark Sargent started to push this a little bit more. And now I'm not really sure what Eric Dubé's religious affiliation is, but I do know that he talks a lot about God or whatever, but I don't know that he's a Christian. I think he just thinks there's a creator. But Mark Sargent does the whole Bible thing. So he thinks
He's
that
from like the Bible says the earth is flat.
Right. Yeah. He
Yeah,
says,
that's huge too.
that the Bible says the earth is flat. There's a lot of people out there that are like total, I guess they say that like every word in the Bible is
Literal.
100% literal. So the earth is flat, and they'll go as far as saying like, that there's like different destinations on maps that we know today isn't true. And they'll like, position the map will be positioned completely different than what's logical and makes sense. And so I did find that to be interesting.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. I mean, I'm all for spirituality, and I think the Bible for a lot of people is a spiritual book, But taking it literal, I mean, that's why we have so many freaking problems.
Oh yeah, I mean, taking the Bible literal, and it's funny too because one of the podcasts that I was listening to was a woman, and she was talking about how she took the Bible literal, and I'm like, you literally can't even talk about this and inform men because in the Bible it says women can't inform men. It literally says that, like literally.
And thankfully, most people that
So-
I know, anyways, they don't take the Bible literal. Like my mom doesn't. That my friends at work don't. Like your mom, you know what I mean? Like they're logical. They just have a spiritual connection with God, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. So, what is flat Earth? I mean, flat Earth is kind of it's the theory, obviously, that the Earth is flat rather than a sphere, and it's a motionless plane with no gravity and a big dome over the top of it.
So we are the center of the universe.
Yeah, it's quite pretty.
We're stationary.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of debate for people in the flat Earth community as to what's above the Earth. Some people say that there's a dome and that the stars and everything is projected on the dome walls, which
and the Bible talks about the firmament.
Right.
Dome. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't quite understand the projection part of it just because I don't know where the projector is. I'm serious. I don't.
I've never actually thought about where the projector would be, to be honest with you.
Yeah. If you guys have any insight on that, please
let us know.
mindmeltpodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to know.
Figuring it out. Yeah.
So, there's, and then, a lot of people say that there's a giant ice wall that goes around the Earth. And if
360 degrees. Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at the Earth, it'd be similar to like a dinner plate. So it'd be, just a circle dinner plate. On the outer edges of the entire dinner plate, there would be an ice wall. And that's what they say Antarctica is. Mm-hmm. And and then as you move inward, you come in. It's kind of like, it's just like the UN logo, if anybody's familiar with the UN logo. But as you come in and there's, all the different continents, and in the center of that is the North Pole. Mm-hmm. So, I find this to be really interesting because the whole Antarctic ice wall thing, they say is there to keep in the oceans and whatever. I mean, I don't know.
And do they believe in global warming?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm sure there's some that do and some that don't.
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing is they all fucking believe different things. I wonder if they believe in whales.
What about the ice age though? Like, I just don't understand. They don't believe it.
Yeah, it's
the
younger,
Earth's not that old. Okay,
right.
That's right.
Yeah. So, there's a big ice wall around the perimeter of it, and this is something that they say is heavily guarded by the government. All of the governments in the world, have military down there to guard it so that nobody can penetrate the ice wall. Nobody can travel through the ice wall or over it or whatever.
Fly over it.
This isn't true. I mean, a lot of people say
we checked, right? We checked if you can fly over it.
Yeah, I mean, you can. You can actually buy fucking plane flights specifically to fly over Antarctica just to see it.
So if you hear Eric Dubé saying that, just Google flight.
Or anybody. I mean, they all say that.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, this is something that I find to be really interesting in the flat Earth community is that I hear a lot of the same arguments from people, and they say the same thing. It's like they heard it from their friend and they just repeat it, but they don't actually look into it. Because I mean, you can literally buy plane flights to fly for the specific reason, not to travel anywhere, but you can buy plane flights specifically to see Antarctica. So
like kind of like a experience.
Yeah, an experience, like a trip, a vacation, or it's like a cruise in the air because you can't cruise through Antarctica. So it's like a cruise in the air. They have all the windows are accommodating so that you can look out and see like the little tuxedo penguins or whatever. And then, and it's a pretty long flight because Antarctica is pretty fucking big.
Yeah, man.
So there's that, right? There's also cruises where you can go on cruises down to Antarctica and you can see Antarctica and you can go around Antarctica. Then, of course, a lot of the time people say that you can't go into Antarctica, but that's also not true. For one, there's a lot of wildlife observation centers down there, trying to, especially with current global warming concerns, there's a lot of ice monitoring and things like that.
Yeah.
But there's totally people that just want to go there and try to hike through. And not to bring up one of our previous podcasts, but David de Rothschild's done that. I mean, he has actually hiked from one to the other side of Antarctica. And that is going to make conspiracy bells ring right now.
I was going to say,
I know it is.
That's more fuel for them.
Yeah, but there's lots of people that have done
Which
it.
is fine.
There's lots of people that have done it. The only reason I know that is just because I was researching the Rothschilds for the last podcast. But I mean, there's lots of people that have done it. And I have a friend that worked on a cruise ship that's been down there. And I've always wanted to go there. And I will one day. I swear I will. It just sounds like so much fun. So
as long as we go to the equator right after and I thaw my shit out, because
well, so there's this common myth that you can't go to Antarctica, that this isn't a myth. There is a treaty protecting Antarctica between all of the countries, establishing that it's
that's another huge argument they have,
right? And there's a treaty establishing that there's no corporate interests that can go down there, and that the country or the continent is basically off limits to other countries, that it's a neutral zone owned by everybody. And they say, what piece of land do you know of that's neutral between governments?
Probably the coldest fucking one there is.
That the oceans are. I mean, there's the oceans are neutral.
Well, that's not a piece of land, though.
I don't give a fuck. The reason that they're saying that piece of land isn't neutral is because, well, why wouldn't we be drilling for resources?
Yeah.
Maybe, just maybe, all of the countries agree that we should not be fucking up Antarctica.
Yeah.
It's in the best interest of our life. I mean, it's like
maybe there's good in the world.
There could be. It's very possible. But there have been a lot of expeditions in Antarctica in the past. We did used to fly planes over Antarctica. We used to fly, like when people would fly from Australia to another part of the world, we used to fly through Antarctica, but we would have problems because there would be fuel freezing and things like that. And it's like aircrafts weren't outfitted with those kinds of for those kinds of conditions. And also the weather and the climate is so unpredictable down there that if you're flying through, you could be battling a huge storm at any time. It
seems dangerous. Yeah.
And it's funny because if there's someone that's a flat earther listening to this, they're gonna be like, oh my god, they're like listening to this spoon-fed fucking government shit, and it's like, look, if you don't believe these things and you think that this is outlandish and crazy, go fucking down there. I mean, you at some point you have to take somebody's word for it. Okay. So they think that the ice wall is Antarctica, right? And so one of my first questions is, and I'm sure this is a lot of people's, is what about the four seasons, right? And so that was one of the things I looked up.
Yeah, the sun, the moon. How does that all work?
Yeah, well, and the four seasons, I'm just talking about climate, right? Because in the summer, in this, where we live in North Idaho, so our summers are warm, our winters are cold, and the days are long in the summer,
I see where
and
you're
the days
going.
are short in the winter. So, I was wondering, what happens, why is it that Alaska is always daylight in the summer and it's always night at winter, So explain that one, right? So I looked it up, and they have this configuration where the sun speeds up and goes around the outer ring.
I think you have to explain where the sun is first, though.
I'm going to.
Okay.
So the sun speeds up and goes in the outer ring during the winter, and that means that the sun is closer to Antarctica, which would cover like Australia, New Zealand, all those countries, right? Chile. And it speeds up and goes around the outer ring. Okay. And that's why it's, it's down there, whatever.
Or outside.
And it's towards the outer ring, right? The only problem that I have with that is that during that time of year in our model, the spherical model, Antarctica is always day. So how would that be possible if the sun is rotating around the ring?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
It
Yeah,
wouldn't be
yeah. It
possible.
can't.
It
No
couldn't be
way.
possible. So it couldn't. So
And the reason is because their sun is like
a spotlight.
it's more of a spotlight. So it's not lighting up, like a half of a globe. It's lighting up if you put a flashlight on a plate and move it around in a circle, it's lighting
Right.
up that specific spot.
Right.
So if Antarctica is around the plate on the edges,
Yeah.
yeah, that just doesn't make any sense.
So who was it? David Avocado Wolf, who's like my go-to guy for scientific information.
Yeah.
He was like, well, there's never been any
There's been two
two
videos that have shown Antarctica during December and all day, and they're both fake.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I don't. There's a lot,
not true.
and you can see like a live stream of Antarctica.
Yeah. So if you guys are
and
really
you
curious,
can see time lapses.
yeah, if you're really curious this winter, go ahead and just watch a live stream of Antarctica and see if it ever becomes nighttime.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it's probably not flat. So there's that. And I know a lot of people that are into the conspiracy can be like, well, who's putting those videos up? And it's like, come on, dude. You think that these guys have enough time just to make fucking fake videos all day, every day?
And who are these guys? I mean,
Yeah,
how
I
many
know.
people are in on this?
Yeah, every government in the world. I mean, the video, the
NASA,
webcams down
like,
there.
Every
I mean,
scientist
well,
would have to be in on it.
yeah, but also there's always live streams going on all over the place,
Yeah.
right? So you're saying that the live stream in Antarctica is fake by the Australian government, because I think that's who have the live streams going on, is the Australian government. So you think the live streams down there are fake, and then you think that the live streams on the ISS are fake, and then you think that the live stream coming from satellites are fake, right? So it's like the government is literally spending thousands of hours every month, and accumulative every day, because there's tons of them going on every day. They have all of these fucking programs going on where they're just making fake videos. And my question is, why?
Why?
For what?
Please fucking someone tell me, because
Someone tell
I am
me.
beating my head against the wall
Trying
here.
to
Like
figure it out, yeah.
there's no answer to that.
Yeah.
No one can answer that.
A lot of people seem to think that it's funding, that NASA needs funding. They need money. It's more ways to extort the government to extort money. I think they're doing a great job with military spending on that.
They're already doing that.
Yeah, if they want to get money from us, they're going to get money. But it's not like if the Earth was flat, they wouldn't be able to find a way to have money.
Yeah, that's
funded
so
to
irrelevant.
NASA,
So irrelevant.
And so, I mean, regardless of that, I just can't to perpetuate such a crazy fucking theory when we have things like Tesla, or not Tesla, SpaceX. That's a private company that's going up there. I mean, it's like, yeah. Anyways, a little bit of logic would be cool.
In the flat Earth model, the
Yeah.
sun is local, so it's not 93
Right.
million miles away.
Yep. 3,000.
It's 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And the moon, some of them, there's different levels. The moon has its own light source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Turn it on, turn it off.
Okay. Well, okay. I don't get the phases though. I didn't get that part. I don't understand.
Didn't either, actually,
okay.
unfortunately. Damn. Wish I did. So I actually have a bunch of stuff written down. I'll just kind of brief through this on kind of some of the different things that the flat earthers believe. So the Flat Earth Society was created in 1956 by a guy named Samuel Shenton. Samuel Shenton was succeeded by Charles Johnson in 1972. The group grew to about 3,000 people, which is less than 1% of the population of the world. And that grew pretty good until 2001, I believe, when Johnson died. And then after that, there was another guy that got it going back again named Daniel Shenton, who ironically isn't really related to Samuel Shenton, who started it, but he started it up and got the group going again in 2004. So these flat earthers believe that there is a glass dome covering the earth. Some flat earthers claim that the stars, the sun, the moon, etc. are projected onto the dome, and others think that the sun, the moon, the stars, etc. are just spheres similar to what we would think the Earth might be. And they're just revolving around us. So that would mean that, some of them think that we're geocentric. Others think a little bit more grandiose and think that there's things projected onto the walls. Most think that the sun and the moon are inside the dome, and they're about 3,000 miles away and much smaller in scale. They also think that the sun is a disk or spotlight, which is what Candra was just talking about, similar to a flashlight.
For the spotlight sun, like if you were in a crowd at a concert and there's a spotlight shining on the performer, you're in the dark, but you're still seeing the light. And if the Earth was a plane, couldn't you like take a telescope or something, and you would still be able to see that light source?
Well, they say that the reason that you can't is because of this thing called, quote unquote, the law of perception, which isn't really a law, but they say that it is. And that's basically that after a certain distance, no matter what, you can't see any further.
Not if you have a telescope. That's not true.
I know that it's not true.
Oh.
They don't, but I do. I mean, we all know that that's not true. I mean, but they don't think that way. So I mean, I really don't understand that part of it, how they couldn't think that way, because I get the law of perception, and it does. I mean, that explains no, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
I'm really trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
I am, and I've been trying,
So we do have an email, mindmeltpodcast@gmail.com.
My mind is open.
We are totally open, 100%.
Change me. How cool would that be, right?
I love the scientific method, and the scientific method is, if you can prove it to me, I will switch my beliefs in a second, okay? Guaranteed.
That's one thing about the flat earth community too, is they love science, but they hate every single scientist. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah, they don't actually love science though, because the science all science
you know
is
what
a
I
method.
mean though,
I know,
they want to test it and see for themselves.
So they say, but they're not actually performing the test.
No, I completely agree.
That's the crazy thing though, is because I have yet to meet a flat earther that goes out there and just like tries these things.
Yeah, because these tests we were talking about earlier in the podcast, I mean, you can do those. The stick one, the binocular up on the plateau, or tree, climb a fucking tree. Yeah.
And so another interesting thing I think is that most of the flat earthers think that everything that happens, like that would appear to be from the outside of our atmosphere, happens from inside the dome. So things like meteorites and asteroids, those all happen inside the dome. They're always inside the dome, and then they fall to the earth before or after some point of time or whatever. So I just wanted to say that, every year we have about 100 meteorites that are over 10 grams in weight fall to the earth. So that would mean that there's an endless supply of meteorites floating around above us that we can't see,
being rotated by electromagnetic force.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah. So I just thought that.
But see, that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, there's an explanation for everything, but it doesn't make sense.
Right. So
I would respect it a lot more if they were like, we don't know, we're figuring that out still. Kind of. Science takes that stance a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love hearing people say they don't know. It's my favorite thing.
That's the best.
It gives me like a science boner.
Like, oh, you're actually here to find out the truth, not to sell something.
Yep. I love it when people say I don't know.
I know. It's
I love it. It's so great.
Sexy.
I'm like, yeah, don't tell me you know. Just say you don't know shit. Tell me you don't know shit. So another thing is a lot of people that are listening to this that don't believe in the flat earth theory are like, well, we have pictures, we've got pictures, right? That was like the first thing I said. Like, that was literally the first thing I was like, that there's pictures of the earth, right? That's like,
I could show you some.
I got shitloads. I got one on my phone as the background. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we have pictures. Well, they believe that every single picture ever created is CGI, computer generated image. And
yet there's no picture of the flat earth.
There's no CGI either, which I think is funny, because if there's the technology to CGI manufacture the earth, why the fuck don't they just CGI manufacture a flat earth to fucking fight their cause?
Because CGI is different than the cartoon simulations we see for flat earth, right? Because like, I mean, there are like,
Well, those are CGI technically, but I'm
Okay.
saying, why don't they make a CGI like the ones of Earth? You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like
as
so
good as.
realistic or
Totally.
whatever.
Okay.
If they
Yeah.
think that those ones are fake, but I mean, NASA does use a
that
lot
would
of
definitely
CGI
persuade a lot
images.
more people.
Yeah, NASA does use a lot of CGI images because CGI is anything that's computer generated. But that is a huge blanket term.
So does everyone ever on Instagram. You filter that. You
Yeah,
filter that shit.
That's true.
You
But I mean,
use
it's such a
photo
blanket
app.
term though, because a
Yes,
lot of
it is.
pictures, like the Earth is fucking big, right?
Uh-huh.
So you got to piece shit together. It's like, have you ever
Super true.
seen those really big fucking landscape pictures where it's like 180-degree panoramic view
Yeah,
of something? Like that's not one picture.
Oh,
That's like
yeah.
some like a really good photographer took like
Yeah.
maybe 20 images and then they piece them together, stitch them together and make it look good, right?
Oh, well, that explains a lot. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that's all a CGI is. That's all a CGI image is. So in some of these cases,
Oh,
there
okay.
are also pictures of the
Yeah.
Earth that aren't CGI that you can download by the minute from different satellites. There's the Japan, I think, has one. Maybe it was China, called the Himawara 8 or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And you can like literally, I did it. I went and looked at all these images of it. It's fascinating. I mean,
It's so gorgeous out there, guys.
God
And
damn it,
it's
that's
so
the-
beautiful.
That's the crazy thing. There's so much mystery.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
much mystery that we don't know. And
Yeah,
how
dude.
exciting is that?
It's
That we don't know.
fucking amazing. And that's the thing that cracks me up about this is because it's like, you know, I mean, and I'm not trying to harp on flat earthers. I get it. Like everybody
We
wants to be a part
secretly
of
love
something.
you.
Yeah, we do. We'll hug the shit out of you if we see you.
We
But-
love that this is a thing.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a thing. I love to troll too. I mean, I love that this is a thing just so I can like, you know, make jokes and shit.
And it really got you back into science.
Yeah.
When
yeah,
you remember
yeah, absolutely,
when you started,
actually,
I
yeah.
mean, you used to be a big like science nerd, but when you started a year ago, like researching flat Earth, like it really, your love
Yeah.
for science kind of rekindled.
Totally, because I was like, the biggest thing is I wanted to understand light and electricity more.
Oh yeah, you got
And
obsessed with
that was-
light.
Oh god damn, I did. So
Eric gets aroused when he talks about light.
yeah, especially now that I understand it and like oh my god. So anyways, I you know, like one thing I just gotta say this, it's like a lot of times, you know, when I'm talking to people about this theory, that the people that believe it, it's like they're like, well, you know, like the government lies to us and this is like you should just not believe everything, like not everything is as it is or whatever.
True.
And I'm like, no shit, but dude, like there is so much out there that we have yet to know that we could be spending our time looking into, and it's so fucking incredible. I mean, dude, when you look into a telescope and you see Jupiter and you see this big fucking planet that's a tenth the size of the sun, and it's just hanging out there in this empty void, and you can see that with your naked eye. Well, not naked eye, well, through a telescope, and you can see that through your eyes, and you just, I mean, that is like touching God. If
And then
if
you
there
think
was
about
anything that was a God, that is touching God. That
And
is just powerful.
and then you think about other galaxies and
Yeah.
what other life forms are out there. I mean,
Possibly.
yeah. Well, I mean, we don't know. There's
Yeah.
so much out there. It's very likely that there is, though,
Yeah,
based on how big the universe is and how
Totally
much we haven't
neutral on
mapped
that.
yet.
Yeah, totally neutral on that.
It's likely.
It's very possible.
It's very likely.
I mean, it's possible.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I mean, shit, anything's likely. But it's probably likely. I guess likely is a good term for it. But it's also like we don't really, when we, you know, I was listening to a podcast today and they were talking about that. This is so off subject, but they were talking about that. And it's like, we are so like, we're looking for something that represents life just based on what we see as life on
True.
Earth. And so it's like, dude, there could be planets out there where like, you know, like it could just be a mountain, but the mountain is somehow life, you know, like that's like a version of life,
Yeah.
like what we just don't understand it. Like maybe like the, you know, like there's like some sort of weird membrane underneath the fucking dirt that's just all interconnected, like the fucking mushrooms or something,
yeah.
you know. But anyways,
And also on top of that,
Yeah.
I mean, even if there was, like, how do you know we'd be able to see it? Because our life is so short. Like
Yeah.
humans may not be around for, I mean, like just comparative to like how long the universe has existed. I mean,
yeah, totally. And everything we see is like in the past because it's so fucking far
yeah.
away. So
So the chances of it
Yeah.
are pretty low. But anyways,
yeah. So anyways, So another thing that flat earthers say is that, all of the satellites are fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can see the satellites.
You can.
I mean, it's really interesting that they don't think the satellites are real, but like you can literally like just go lay on your back in a clear night and you can see satellites all
I see them all
over.
the time.
There's too many fucking satellites.
Yeah, it's
out
like
there.
we're being bombarded with
Yeah.
freaking cell phone signals
Yeah,
and like
satellite signals. It's crazy.
Like, come on.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a huge problem one day.
We are polluting.
We're gonna deal with a lot of this stuff falling to the earth because of collisions and whatever else. But
we're just putting shit up there like it's candy.
Yeah, or something.
That didn't make any sense.
So there's crazy satellites everywhere, but they don't think that any of those are real. So I've said
there's no way to argue with it.
Yeah, I've said to my friend, I'm like, well, what about when you see them? And they're like, well, I see something moving in the sky, but I can't prove that it's a satellite. I was like, get a fucking telescope, right?
Right.
And you can see satellites through a telescope. I swear to God, I've done it. Like, I'm not just making that up.
Eric just traded out some work for a space observatory.
Yeah.
And we're going to be able to see some cool shit one day once we get it all set up.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
So excited.
I can't believe that. I mean, it's just sitting out there right now. I just feel like I want to set it up so bad.
Well, we need to get it like a telescope too.
Yeah, exactly. This is just to house the telescope.
It's the
like
dome
rotates.
thing that rotates.
It's pretty badass. But
we're going to invite all you flat earthers over.
Yeah, dude. You guys can all come over. We'll have
a sleepover.
We'll have a sleepover. It'll be great. And so another thing that they'd say is that the International Space Station is fake. And the International Space Station, you can actually download an app that'll tell you where the space station's at and when it's going to come overhead for your area, And I mean, I used to get text messages, and it was like every couple of weeks I'd get a text message like, it's coming over. It's going to be like, 10 degrees north of you or something like that. And I would watch it fly by. But once again, even with a good camera, a really good camera with a telephoto lens, you can actually see it.
Cool.
You can see the Space Center through it.
Wow.
But they don't think it's real. And these guys have fucking good cameras because they always stand at shores and zoom in on boats and shit. Like,
it shows you how big of a belief and faith-based it really is versus admitting you don't know.
Well, when I was listening to Eddie Bravo's podcast with Eric Dubé, Eric Dubé was talking about it, and like someone said to him, like, well, what about satellites? And he's like, well, I mean, like, if you just want to believe that there's satellites just because someone told you that there's satellites up there, and they're like, well, what about direct TV, right? Because that's satellite television. Oh, so you're saying that they couldn't transmit the direct TV over like radio signal? And he's like, well, I'm not saying that, but whenever there's a cloudy day, it's like I don't get the service, if my satellites. Oh, well, so you're saying that, and it's like, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just asking.
I'm asking you a question, and I want
because you're the one that's saying it's not real. Yeah. So, like, when you say something, you have to be able to provide the information to back it up. But that's what he does. He always tries to make it sound like you're not intelligent enough just to get it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I've had satellite radio in my whips, right?
Uh-huh.
When you drive past buildings, you lose service, right? But I've also had an AM radio, and there's not a goddamn thing that's blocking that signal, right? I mean, so it's not transmitted the same.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah, I think Eric Dubé is full of it.
He's full of something. So,
like, even if this was a true conspiracy, like, I think he still wouldn't even believe it. Like, he's just doing this to make money. Yeah,
I know. It's, whenever
you can tell he's lying.
Yeah, whenever someone is when they talk to you, like, this is something that I've tried to explain to my friends or whatever, but I don't know if it makes sense. But when you're talking to someone that's extremely intelligent about something, when they're explaining it to you, they want you to understand it. So they explain it in a way that you can get it.
Yeah.
I don't mean to say this rude, but they dumb it down. You know, like if I'm talking to
You
a
have
physicist,
to dumb shit down for me all the time with science.
sure,
and
yeah,
anything.
and if I'm talking to a physicist or something, and I'm trying to understand something extremely complex, and they want me to understand it, they really want me to understand it
Because they care about the truth.
because they care about people learning.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
they care about education. It's an important part to a scientific endeavor. So it's like when they explain it, they're going to say, look, you know, imagine this, and then they're going to dumb it down so that you get it. But if you're full of shit, if you're a huckster and you're just trying to make someone believe something, whether it's true or not, you're going to explain it in a way where they don't understand it, but it sounds really good. So it's like,
And you're not actually answering anything.
right,
Or
you're just
telling them
talking
anything.
in circles, and you're using big
And
words.
the difference is with that, it's usually something really simple that we like, you know, like what about the satellite? It's just such a simple, it should be a simple answer,
Yeah.
but it's not.
Yeah.
And with vice versa, it's so like with science or whatever you were just talking about, like how complex that is. And they make it easy for you to understand.
Yeah, a perfect example of this is listen to someone like Brian Cox. And are you familiar with Brian Cox?
It sounds familiar, probably from you.
Yeah, he's an astrophysicist. He works no, he's not an astrophysicist. I'm sorry. He's a particle physicist, and he works with CERN and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And actually, he has discussed the flat Earth theory a few times, I think. But he's a big public voice. Conspiracy theorists hate him. They think that he's like a fucking shill or whatever.
Yeah.
But so he is, I think he's awesome. And the reason I think he's awesome is because he's really good at just slowing things down and explaining things in a way that can be understood by the average person.
Yeah.
So Brian Cox is, you know, he's a great example of that, where he wants you to understand. So he's going to explain it 15 different ways until you get it.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's people like Deepak Chopra. Okay. When Deepak Chopra talks, it's like super complex scientific terms that don't really mean what he's saying.
Can I just say how much I like him, but I hate what he says?
Yeah, I know. He is cool.
He is
I'd
such
hang
a
out
funny
with him.
guy.
I'd hang out with him. I wouldn't like.
He seems like a
believe
nice
anything
guy
he says,
too.
but,
He seems like a really nice person.
Yeah, I know.
But
he's
anyways.
an interesting guy. But I mean, he's a prime example of someone that just over explains nothing. You know,
Nothing.
he just uses these big, huge terms to try to
Yeah.
fucking say something that doesn't make any sense.
And even him, it's not near as bad as Eric Dubé.
Oh yeah, no,
Not
Eric-
even close.
Yeah,
Like Eric and I were listening to a video of him explain something, and we had to like stop it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I'm gonna brag about my husband. He's really smart, and he was like trying to like, you know, it didn't make any sense.
No, he was using big words together that shouldn't go together, and they were just. I was just like, dude, come on, man. You like it's like
Try a little.
yeah, it's like. My boss always says it's like when you ask somebody what time it is and they tell you how to make a watch. You know what I mean? That's like he was using like 500 words for something that could be summed up in 10.
Yeah.
And I just
It's a
was
good
like,
analogy.
yeah, dude, stop. So, another thing that I thought was really interesting is that they claim that the water always finds its own level, you know?
Oh yes.
So they basically say that if the Earth was a sphere, that the Earth, I don't know, the Earth couldn't be a sphere because the water always finds its own level, right? So if it were to find its own level, all of the water, this is okay. If the water always finds its own level, the water would all drain to the bottom of the Earth.
No. They don't. No.
I swear to
They don't
God, I
all-
saw it, dude. It's on Eric Dubé's website. I swear to God that the Earth, all the water
only
would.
because they don't believe in gravity.
They're basing this off of our model, so
Well, then
they're
they're wrong.
yeah. They're saying that all the water would pour down to the bottom of the Earth, and this is so weird because
There
it's
is
like
no bottom.
that's correct. There's only a center. And that's so for anybody that doesn't understand how gravity works, it's center mass, okay? Gravity pulls to the center of the mass. So,
That was just Bruno.
oh,
He's just snoring. Scared
so,
you.
yeah. So the center of the mass of the object is what gravity is going to pull to. So it's just imagine it trying to pull everything inward, and that's where it's going to be. So water will be pulled inward. There's no such thing as a bottom of the earth. They don't fall off. Okay. It
And up or down,
Yeah,
it
it
doesn't really exist.
No. Yeah.
I mean,
We think of north and south, but that's not up and down. That's just north and south.
right.
And so anyways, I just thought that was crazy to me. When I saw the picture, they had a picture of the water being on the bottom of the earth. I was
Oh
like,
my gosh.
whoa.
They should simplify it because it's it's too many things to disprove all at once. Like they should just, because they have some decent points, right?
I haven't seen any.
Okay, well, if they should just take their best points and stick to that. I think they'd be more successful.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't need 200 proofs. Give me one. Like seriously. So
Because I'm less convinced every time I
Every
hear
time,
something like
yeah.
that. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
So I wrote down some ways, like easy ways to determine that the earth is a sphere. Okay. So that way, if you guys are on the fence on this one, here's some really cool, easy ways for you to know that the earth is a sphere. So good ways doing the old Eratosthenes stick thing. Okay. Call your homie if they're over in like Florida or something and you're in Wisconsin, I don't know, and put a stick down, see where the shadow goes, and that's an easy way to do it. You can actually look up online how to do it. The stick needs to be the same distance out of the ground, and it needs to be measured at the same time of day. I would recommend high noon because that's when the sun is at the uppermost point, right? So then watch a lunar eclipse. That's a really, really easy way. I mean, you don't have to do shit. All you have to do is sit there and watch it. Okay. Watch a ship leave a port with a spotting scope. So if you're, in a area close to water or close to the ocean, you can go out, sit on a pier, set up a spotting scope, and just watch one of those big ass ships leave the harbor. Another way is to view constellations while traveling. It's really great because you'll be out in nature, and everybody loves to do that. Look up at the sky. Not very many people do that. Definitely not enough. Check out some different constellations. Take some pictures. Get a good camera. Who knows, dude? It might inspire you to do like really badass photography. And that's something that I really like about this whole like scientific endeavor is that you can find a hobby out of it.
Good things come
Yeah.
from information.
Yeah, totally. If anything, this should inspire you to think for yourself and try to explore.
Absolutely.
Another way is to download the ISS app and watch it when it comes to your area, observe it, get out a spotting scope or a telescope and watch it go by. And that's really easy to do. You can, fix your telescope to the position. It tells you the degrees that it's going to be passing by and everything. Go to a flat region and see how far you can see something. Like if you're in a flat region, see as far as you can with a set of binoculars, and then climb to maybe like the top of a house or a building and then look out and see how far you can see up there, because you should be able to see further because you're going to have see past the range of the curve, right? So another way is to view other planets with telescopes. And this is something that, it might not prove that Earth is flat or spherical, but it's going to prove that other planets are spherical. And when you see that other planets are spherical, you should be able to deduce that ours is as well, right?
Yeah, you can make a more educated guess at that point.
Yeah, it's not very often things in nature are like two completely different ways, especially when everything else out there is a certain way. Until you look through a telescope and see a fucking flat Earth, or a flat planet, then there's none out there. I mean, it doesn't make, because of gravity, anything flat turns into a ball. So
Yeah, and so many other planets that were created in different locations under different circumstances show the same property.
right.
So we can highly likely assume that our Earth has the same property.
Yeah. Another thing that you can do is, you know, like travel to a different part of the country. You'll realize that, you know, we have different time zones, and the reason we have different time zones is because we live on a sphere. So, some areas are always, you know, night in the winter and day in the summer. That's another way that we know that the Earth is a sphere, because of the axial tilt. And, you know, we know that Alaska is going to be all day, all summer. And, you know, Antarctica is going to be, at that time of year, it's going to be the night all the time. And you can go on to just, I don't remember what the website was, but I Googled Antarctica live stream, and you can actually go see that it's nighttime right now. I just did it. And then you can look at images from space. You know, I mean, I know that a lot of people think that those are just CGI, but it's so beautiful. It's so humbling. It's just amazing being able to look at these images. And I think that it really, even if you think the Earth is a sphere, still do it. It's just such a great thing to be able to see your Earth and see where you live,
Where you came from.
where you come from, see other planets. It's just magnificent. There's also, you know, there's a website called Metabunk, and they just disprove conspiracies, and or not, I mean, not all conspiracies, but they kind of just find the truth in things, I guess, and debunk false conspiracies. And they actually have a really awesome thing on there. I'm going to butcher this, but it's called Lake Pontchartrain or something. And they have these power transmission lines that travel in a straight line over the entire lake. And you can see clearly that they're disappearing over the curve. And that's really cool. And you can actually go there and see it in person as well if you don't believe the images. Then there's also, you know, one of the things that Eric Dubay says, and there's on other flat earth websites, is that this is such a fucking stupid thing that they say. I don't even understand why they say this, but that that when train and bridge builders build things, they don't take the curve into consideration, and that's just not true.
They do say that.
They say that, but that's not true. I mean, I've actually talked to an engineer about this because I was curious, and I have an engineer friend at work, and I asked him, and he said, yes, they do check that. They have to. And the way that they do that, and you've probably seen this before, is with big fucking lasers, and they like literally have to take into account the amount of curve, because when they put the beams up that hold up the bridges or the train bridges, the bottom part of that is going to be closer together than the top part because of the curve. So that's just not even true at all. That's just a blatant lie. And
fact check.
Yeah, fact check that stuff. Talk to an engineer. You can call an engineer office if you're really that curious. I mean, these are things that like don't just take people's words for this shit. You know, because it's crazy to me how many things they said that I'm just listening to, and I was like, what?
That's not true.
That's not even true. You know what I mean? Like the light ray thing. Like they said that because when you see light rays, they all come in a really tight bundled position, that the sun's a lot closer than it appears. And I was just like, that's so dumb. The atmosphere. You know what I mean? Like, there's just really normal scientific answers for all of these things. So yeah, that's all I got on this one.
Sounds like a wrap. That was fun.
Yeah. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I mean, I don't want anybody to think that I'm being closed-minded to this theory. I don't want you to think that I'm just like, you know, ignoring, you know, evidence or whatever. I have deeply, deeply looked into this. It's not something that I just took people's words for or whatever. It's just... And
we will definitely read anything you send us.
Anything. Yeah, if there's anything, any proof, 100% proof or whatever that you want to send me, please send it to me. I won't ridicule you. I won't be an asshole. I really appreciate different opinions. I love science. I love trying to learn new things. And I have totally 100% changed my mind on different scientific theories and different conspiracy theories over the years. I don't commit to anything. I try not to believe anything. I just want I think things are either likely or unlikely, and whatever's more likely, I tend to go with. But I'm open-minded. Whatever information you want to send me, like I said, mindmeltpodcast@gmail.com. We are here to listen to you. So
cool.
So, what do you want to do next week?
I know you're looking at me like I should probably remember, but I don't remember what you want. Oh, Silk Road. Let's do Silk Road. Hey,
Silk Road. Let's do Silk Road.
Is that a good idea?
Yeah,
Eric?
let's do some Silk Road.
Oh, that's going to be a fun one.
That's going to be a fun one, especially since we have some personal experience with it.
You guys don't want to miss the Silk Road episode. I'm telling you, it's going to be the best one so far.
Yeah, so
for sure, hands down.
Hands down. So if you guys have any questions for us, if you want to hit us up, that'd be great. Also, why don't you stop by, give us a 5-star review on iTunes or any podcast app that you listen to. If you give us a 5-star review on iTunes, I will give you a shout out. We'll talk. Hit us up. I also created an Instagram page. So
Mind Melt Podcast.
Mind Melt Podcast. Hit us up. All right.
Sweet. Bye, guys.
We are out. Later.